What's up? Welcome to Tales Tomorrow. I'm Morrow, your storyteller for today, and with me I have some more RPG horror stories. Health update with Mr. Morrow. Mr. Morrow? I don't like that. That sounds weird. I'm improving. I know last week I talked about having like type 2 diabetes and everything, but you know what? Funnily enough, with the changing my eating habits and just in general health habits, and then also basically exercising every single day at this point, trying to make sure I get myself back in shape and jogging, I've made some significant progress. Hopefully at this point, I may not even need to be even on meds anymore if I just get myself back in shape and keep myself basically better, more fit. Still not perfect, but hey, I'm improving. Let's get some RPG horror stories for today. Player kept lashing out at the group until he left. I've been running a Cyberpunk Red campaign for about a year, maybe a little bit more. Months ago, I had a player throw a tantrum and quit when he didn't get his way. I was in another game as a player, and there was a player there who seemed chill and fun to play with, so I sent him an invite to join mine. He beat around the bush and didn't commit to joining or not joining. Another player in that game proactively asked me if I could join mine. I said sure, and it was only then that the person I asked changed his mind and decided to join. So my game had lost 1 and gained 2. Great, right? Except problems began to emerge with a player I invited over time. As I grew to learn, when he got into a bad mood or had issues going on in his private life, he couldn't keep it separate from the table. He started disengaging from the game or having his character act unnecessarily petty or hostile to the other players, and after the game he freely admitted that he did that because he was feeling some type of way. Sometimes it was because he felt ignored, sometimes because he didn't like their or my decisions, etc. But if I asked him to give me examples of why he felt ignored or what I can do so he doesn't feel ignored, he couldn't give me answers other than he just can't handle not being the center of attention and he'll try to do better. This is like opening up a can of worms already. I don't know if this is a proper euphemism for this. Is it a really euphemism? Isn't euphemism supposed to be something sexual? Am I misunderstanding English language? I think I am. Anyway, this is already a can of worms just to open up already. Just like in general, this is a lot to handle. We got a player here that basically, if they just are not in a mood or not feeling great or not feeling positive, they'll basically lash out and just be kind of a difficult player to play with, either at other players or be at a DM and just be hostile, unpleasant, basically a problem player, not playing well with the party, not being good playmate at the table. Is that the wording I want to use? Probably not. I guess just player, not being a good player that's just there to have fun, but instead creating problems. However, I do have a problem with the player says like, you know, they don't feel ignored and stuff. Obviously players shouldn't be ignored or shouldn't feel bad at the table, especially if somebody else is doing something else to them and they're feeling bad over it. That's definitely a problem for sure. But if the DM is asking like, how are you feeling ignored? What can we do to like alleviate it and stuff like that? If the only excuse is like, you know, it's written here where they just don't feel like they're the center of attention, I don't know what to say. Sometimes you're not gonna feel like the center of attention. I get it. As a player, you're supposed to be the main character of the story. Or some people like to say that there are no main characters, that everybody is important in the cast. Either way, the party is the focus of the story. There's no singular main character. I like to think of it as everybody in the party, all the players are the main characters, the main cast of the show, so to speak. And as a DM, you are setting the set dressing, the NPC, the world and stuff. But at the end of the day, everybody should feel, every player participating should feel like they're the core, the most important person, the spotlight in the session. And if they don't feel like that, then obviously it's a problem. However, the player answered that they couldn't handle not being the center of attention. And that, in my opinion, is a bit of a problem. As a player, you're not the center of attention, you're part of a collective, a party, if you will. You're part of a party working together, and everybody shares the spotlight equally, or at least try to share it equally. I know some story arcs can be a little more important for a specific player over others, but that's another conversation entirely. At the end of the day, everybody should have an equal, or at least marginally equal amount of spotlight when it comes to playing the game. And if the players complain they're not being the center of attention, I feel like that's maybe the crux of the problem. They just want to be the center of attention, but you're not allowing them to be the center of attention, and other players aren't allowing them to be the center of attention, and that makes them feel ignored. I don't know. If the player was talking about like just not feeling involved in the game, that would be one thing, but they're specifically stating that they don't feel like they're the center of attention and that's a bad thing. I think that itself might be the crux of the problem, but you know, that's a little bit too early to judge. Let's get to the rest of this story. It was also a very inconsiderate player towards me as a GM and the other players at the table. Frequently, he would interrupt me when I started to describe a scene to ask a question or try to do something else. If other players were trying to have a scene that didn't involve his character, he'd interrupt them mid-conversation to do something completely inconsequential, such as to start asking questions about the map or once even started moving his token around and being very vocal about trying to find cracks in the wall I drew. We found a VTT where I have to manually draw walls on the map. Hell yeah. At one point, I designed a major story questline around his character and an NPC he requested to be involved more. Halfway through the quest, he told me that he didn't like the story, and he knew he asked me for it, but he didn't know what he wanted other than, "This is not it." Not something a GM enjoys hearing. Now, I'm all for constructive criticism, but what was I supposed to do with that kind of feedback? It made me really struggle to maintain interest in finishing the story, even though some of the other players had some interest in it. If I'm designing a story plot or a story hook for a singular player to be like the main focus of this storyline or a session or a couple of sessions, and their only feedback is, "I don't know what you should do, but what you're doing here is not it," yeah, I'll probably be pissed as well. How can you work with that? You can't work with that whatsoever. If you can't say like, "Oh, I didn't like this because this was overplanned," or "I didn't like this took too long," or "this felt a little bit messy because we didn't know the objective," or "we were given not a lot of directions here and was a little bit too open-ended," or "this felt a little bit too railroady because we couldn't have a decision or make an impact onto option A, B, and C." That's feedback that you can work with when you put in the detail, because at the end of the day, it's a collaborative storytelling, and if you're not providing feedback to your DM to improve, it makes it really frustrating for the DM to even plan out stuff for you in the first place if your only feedback specifically is, "This is not it." Imagine a player, if you will. You're making a story for your players, specifically created for them, and all they're saying is, "DM, I don't like what you're doing." All right, well, I'm sorry that you don't like what I'm doing. Could you please explain to me what specifically you don't like about it? "I don't know, but what you're doing right now, I don't like it." Can you tell me in words why you don't like it so I can improve for the future? I don't know, but what you're doing right now, you better stop that right now." The feedback is extremely unconstructive and you can't work with it. Here's the best part about feedback, right? You gotta give information to your DM so they can take the information and then do something with it and then put an output, you know? That's something I learned early on when it comes to like, in general, like content creation and everything. You take feedback, comments, feedback on whatever going on, ratings on videos and stuff like that. You take that, you dissect it for the most important bits, and then you put out a better content like that. A lot of content creators, when it comes to making anything at all, right? And if just in general, if you make anything in the whole wide world, constructive feedback can go greatly into making sure the next product you make is an improvement and a constant improvement, because you take feedback, make changes, produce a new thing. Feedback, make changes, produce an even better thing. And it continues on and on and on until you're satisfied with the content you're producing. Most of the people that are important in your life also are satisfied with what you're producing. However, if the player's only saying, "What you're doing right now is not it," that is entirely unhelpful. You can't work with that. You don't even know what's wrong about it even at all. If the DM knew what to even change, that'd be a step in the right direction. But if the player can't even say that, then what do you even do for somebody like that, huh? What do you even do? The next day, when everyone tried to talk to him about what was bothering him, he kept refusing to elaborate and kept saying, "It's not you all, it's me." He said it was because of all of us weren't meeting his standards, but it's on him for having unrealistic expectations. He refused to provide examples of how we weren't meeting his standards and kept being evasive. I then told him he should take a break from the game. He then announced to the group he was taking an indefinite break from the game. Then he changed his mind, and without consulting me, said one session, but promised that he'd make an effort to change his attitude and behavior. Then he wanted to spectate the next session. At this point, his negativity and antics had worn out of the other players and me. So I had a talk with the other players and agreed that he needs to at least take an entire month off. After that, he left our Discord server and hadn't said a word to me since. Although we're still in game that I'm in as a player, so that's going to be awkward. I will note though, he has never treated the GM of the game as disrespectfully as he has treated me, and had much better table manners in that game. Hence why I had invited him to mine in the first place. Weirdly enough, I'm gonna say probably what's going on is the DM in the other game and this player have probably had a lot of background conversations, or for whatever reason, this player just doesn't really respect you or your time, or maybe they were testing the waters. Sometimes players come into the game, weirdly enough, to test the waters and see how much freedom they can get away with. Maybe that's what the player was doing. Maybe this was a test of them. Or maybe that's how they play the game. But I mean, if they behave differently at a different player's table, you know, with a different DM, maybe the DM already has a lot of conversation with them behind the scenes. Maybe that's avoided publicly in game. I don't know. I'm not fully sure. Either way, still really strange behavior to do, and I think you're right to remove the problem player. If the problem player continues to never change, and no matter how many times you try to talk to them out of game, try to convince them to be a little more constructive when it comes to the feedback, to improve the experience for them, right? The DM is not doing it for themselves. The DM is doing it for them, to give them a fun story, to make them enjoy the game more, especially curate a story just for them. Like, if you can't provide feedback to that sort of thing and just be cordial about it, yeah, you're not gonna be fun to be around the table. Like, everybody at the table, the DM and players both, need to come in with some sort of like a proper etiquette towards it, you know? Don't be rude, don't interrupt. You the basic things, the golden rules a lot of us learn when we were like, what, a 5-year-old little tiefling tyke when we were just running around the streets pickpocketing people. You didn't do that? Oh, maybe it was just me. At the same time, my parents would take it away when I was only 4, so that makes sense. Anyway, rude player being a rude player and just not being cooperative when it comes to just interacting with the rest of the party or the DM. I think the decision was pretty valid, but what do you think in the comments below? Let me know and I'll get to the next story for today. How I got kicked out of my first D&D group for refusing to date the DM. So at the time this story took place, I was in high school. I, 16 female, was approached by a guy, 18 male, asking if I wanted to join his D&D group after he overheard me talking to a friend about D&D. I went to a small school, so I knew most people. He seemed pretty harmless. It was a group of 6, including me and the DM. They were all 17 or 18, and I was the only girl in the group. We played at the DM's house, and I didn't see any crazy red flags initially. After a few games together, things got weird. The party were interrogating a woman, can't remember exactly why, but it was something related to a smuggling ring, and everyone was insisting that my character be the one to do the interrogation because I was the only girl, and it would have been weird for them to do it. When I tried persuading the NPC to give up the information we needed, she refused, and the DM told me that she wouldn't give up any information unless we tortured her. Huh, you know, you could always just gaslight, lie, try to encourage them in different ways, or try to, I don't know, hold something over them, sort of great deep secret. But I mean, I guess torture is that too, but I feel like you're sort of kind of skipping a bunch of steps, you know? Is this gonna be like a weird like DM's fetish about torture stuff? Are they like into torture kinks? Maybe, I hope not, but we'll see. I told him I really didn't want to do that, and he said I was being a bad player for disrespecting him as the DM. Everyone kept pushing me, and I ended up excusing myself from the table, and the DM eventually moved on and let someone else do the rest of the interrogation. That was the first major red flag that I wouldn't enjoy playing at the table, but I really wanted to play a game, and I was anxious as a teenager who really wanted friends who shared my interests, so I persevered. Let me just tell you right now, you're not a bad player for refusing to torture an NPC. If that's not what your character would have done in that situation, or as a player, you don't want to do that. And that's especially not disrespecting the DM. What else are you gonna do? If the DM tells you, hey, kill all these orphan children because they're done bad. They're, I don't know, they've been colluding with Beelzebub or whatever. I have no idea. I don't know why orphan children be colluding with Beelzebub. What is that, tieflings or something? Yeah, there you go. Kill all these orphan tieflings right now. You don't want to? You think that's horrible? You're disrespecting me. Out of my game right now. Out of this house. Just ridiculous. It's absurd. It's not disrespecting the DM if you decide, hey, I don't want to torture somebody. Maybe there's other ways. Convince them, you know, for some sort of secrets. Hold ransom or gaslight them or have some dirt on them or, I don't know, release them and then follow them back to see if they can uncover some sort of a secret. There are multiple ways to do so, but you don't have to force your players to torture somebody. Out of all the ways you could disrespect your DM, this is probably the weirdest one. Apart from this, there were a small moments that made me uncomfortable. Male NPCs hit on my character every other session, and DM would not stop trying to get me to describe myself harming people. This wasn't just him wanting realistic combat, as he didn't ask anyone else this. At this point, I'm convinced it was some kind of a kink or fetish. I told him multiple times that I was uncomfortable with that level of graphic violence. He backed off after a while, then do the exact same thing again next session. That is a really weird one. Is the DM into sadomasochism? And maybe they want to be dominated by some sort of dominatrix, mommy kind of character that you clearly aren't because you're 16, just want to play some D&D and roll math rocks. I don't see the story ending any good, so we're just going to go ahead and treat it as like a ripping off the band-aid and just go with it. The one thing I will say, as I say often, do not bring your kinks or fetishes, assuming this is a kink and fetish, into D&D. In fact, actually, what might be good is don't bring your crazy headcanon fetishes or ships or really anything that's like ride or die kind of thing. Imagine, if you will, if I decided I suddenly want to turn my regular D&D game into, you suddenly teleport from the world of Eldrosia into Succulandia, and you're currently right now on the 69th hell with all the succubi women. Begin. You know, just suddenly turn the game into my own little like obsession, I guess. It doesn't have to be a kink or a fetish, but like if it's like some sort of an obsession or fixation that you're just forcing onto players without them wanting to, or vice versa, players forcing onto everybody else without them wanting to, yeah, it can get extremely awkward and weird. But anyway, let's continue. The DM's mom started inviting me to stay for dinner after games, which I thought was very kind of her. My home life wasn't great, so it was nice to have an adult who was nice to me. Turns out, she was only nice to me because she thought I was dating her son. Oh my god. This guy, this DM, the absurdity. Imagine that you have to lie to your own mother to say, hey mom, this girl that plays D&D with me and stuff, she's my girlfriend and stuff. She's totally my girlfriend or anything. It's not that I just play D&D with her or anything. It's just... like, okay, I'm not making fun of the guy for wanting some sort of like a romance. Like, I understand. Everybody wants to be with somebody, and that's completely fine. There's nothing wrong with that. And there's nothing wrong with being attracted to somebody. That's completely fine. But to go out of your way and to lie to your own mother and say, yeah, this girl that plays D&D with me is my girlfriend, mom. And then your mom now thinks it makes it even more awkward because she thinks, oh, my sweet boy has a lady now. Yeah, you can stay for dinner. You're very nice, girl. Yeah, you stay for dinner. Oh, this is a can of worms. It's not even a can, it's a bucket of worms, dude. It's not even a can of worms. Oh, this is just getting weirder and weirder by the day. I mean, expected out of like a really awkward like teenager in high school-ish. I'm assuming you guys are in high school. After a few months or weekly games, the DM asked me to stay behind after our game and asked me on a date. I was completely stunned. I was very open about being a lesbian, and I had no idea why he thought I'd be even remotely interested in him. I told him I didn't like him like that and tried to leave. When he told me that if I didn't agree to go on a date with him, he'd kick me out of the group. I asked him, did you only invite me to this group to hit on me? This man literally said, yes, why else would I invite a girl? I ditched the group immediately after that and didn't play D&D for 2 years. I picked it up again this year, and recounting the story to my new group reminded me of how messed up it was. What the hell? I understand that there's a notion, and I don't disagree with the notion necessarily, that D&D could bring people together, and you could in fact find some sort of romance through like your hobbies and stuff. Whether you play video games like Final Fantasy 14 or play D&D, or really if you do anything at all, you can always find other like-minded people that also enjoy the hobby and the kind of stuff that you enjoy as well. However, in this situation, the guy really thought he got something cooking there by just inviting a girl, oh my god, you should go joining our session, and thinking he's gonna woo her with his incredible DMing skills. Maybe work on the whole torture thing first and just now weirding people out. Number one. Second, it's really strange to specifically invite somebody just so you could try to date them or like flirt with them or like hit on them and stuff. I understand if you like, I don't know, like if you, let's say you yourself watching the video, if you have a significant other or like somebody that you like that's part of your sessions, DM, player, what have you, and you do occasional flirting and everybody's cool with that and everything, you know, you and the person are fine with it, then you do whatever you want to do. I mean, especially if you're like grown adults, like, hey, do whatever the hell you want to do. But in this situation, the guy thought he was really putting on the moves with the whole torture fantasy, describing how bloody it is, looking for his great dominatrix, a bloody dommy mommy girlfriend or something. I'm not fully sure. So then the quest turned from killing goblins and bugbears and a bunch of bandits to finding a dommy mommy sadomasochist girlfriend, I guess. I don't know. I still don't have no idea why the guy had the whole like gory and torture and everything, like that whole kink. I still don't, there's a word for it. I just don't know what it is. Does anybody know what that word is for like describing gory and torture and stuff? I think it's like sadomasochism or something, or dominatrix, or I don't know. There's a word for it. Somebody will know out there. Let me know down in the comments below what you think it is, or if you know what it is. Either way, really awkward way to start off D&D, but I hope you're having a blast now, and I hope you're enjoying yourself and in a good group and not being forced to play D&D with somebody just so they can flirt with you or try to flirt with you. I don't know. I wouldn't exactly call it flirting when you're trying to force somebody to torture an NPC and then getting mad at them and saying, you're disrespecting my DM, you're disrespecting me as a DM. It's not exactly the Riz I was thinking of. And with that, that's gonna be all our stories for today. I want to thank you very much for watching, and thanks so much for being here. If you like what I do, consider subscribing to the channel and leaving a like. Also, if the RPG Horror Stories ever goes down, or if you want to submit your own personalized horror story, email is down in the description below. I'll see you again in more Tales Tomorrow. Bye-bye.